My name is Sam Harrelson, and I am from the AppSpot forum as well as a couple of blogs and random places. I've been in the industry for a long time, so it's good to see familiar faces and new faces, and always glad to be here at these events where you really sort of see the revitalization of affiliate marketing every year, and it's just wonderful to see a lot of new people as well as old friends. So thank you for coming. We're talking about social media, and that's really a unfortunate term in a lot of ways. I don't like the term social media, but it's I guess a good descriptor of the Web 2.0 stuff mixed with social networking, mixed with a lot of the sort of community-minded stuff that's going on in the web now. But in general, I look at the whole web itself as social media. I mean, there's really not a delineation anymore between even something like Gmail, which a lot of people in here probably use for email, and social networking, et cetera. So we're going to talk about ways that as affiliates, as affiliate managers, as networks, whatever, you can use these tools, because that's what they are at the end of the day, things like Twitter, Facebook, whatever. They're tools. We're going to talk about how you can use those tools to do better business. And we're going to look at specific sites that I use, so kind of a toolkit, if you will. So the first part of the session is going to go pretty quick, the first two questions. Who is using this stuff, and should you use this stuff? The answers might seem obvious, but I thought it'd be a good foundation to sort of set the parameters for where we're going. And then the third part, what stuff should and shouldn't you use, is going to be the more detailed and longer parts. Before we start, I just want to make sure that I'll put out my expectations for you. We've got a lot of people in here, and I would love to be able to participate. So please don't be afraid to ask questions. I was an 8th grade science teacher for a couple of years, so I'm a big fan of participation, and I kind of expect it. And it's hard for me to speak now just because of dealing with unruly 8th graders for so long. It's hard for me to speak now if people are just quiet. So there's a mic here. Please make sure to use it. And after the session, please make sure to fill out your Affiliate Summit 2008 East feedback form. Hopefully positive. So who's using this stuff? Keep in mind that this is from the great Doc Searles, who's one of my web heroes. We need to remember that the net is still new. The web is even newer. Both have profound effects on life, is undeniable. But it's a few seconds after the Big Bang, and all we have are a few light elements, a lot of heat, and no galaxies. So I think this analogy, this metaphor for the evolving social web and how to use this stuff is really apt. If you know anything about astronomy, there's Big Bang, create a universe, and a few seconds after that, there were a lot of elements floating around, but not a lot of action for a couple of million years. And 60, 80 million years later, stuff started colliding into each other. And that's really where we are with the web now. So we're going to keep this analogy as we go through. And I think it's a really powerful image to think about as marketers, especially, to think about how this stuff can impact our business on the web, as well as even sometimes off the web, but how this evolving nature of the web is something you should stay on top of. The one question I always get when I do consulting and that kind of stuff for companies is, why in the world should I allow my employees to spend 20 minutes a day or an hour a day on something like Twitter, where they're talking about what their cat had for breakfast? And it's a very, very good question. And that's kind of the stuff we're gonna talk about. This is from Universal McCann, which is a leading research company, and they put out some great stuff. Who is using this stuff? Just a couple of fun slides. 18 to 34-year-old people. In 2007, about 15% were blogging. Now, and 1 year later, almost up to 25%. Adult bloggers, I guess people over 35, and I'm not there yet, so it's pretty funny. I don't know why there's a delineation between 34 and 35. Adult bloggers, somewhere in the range of 5% up to about 15% now. And they also throw in IM. Just making the point here that it's clear that people are using this stuff. People are starting to get engaged on the web. This is not just people sharing what they had for breakfast or what their cats had for breakfast. It really is starting to become a preeminent part of most people's online existence in terms of using things like Facebook, MySpace, Twitter, et cetera. And it's only going to continue to grow. This is from 2007 from Pew Research. Teen boys, which is the more bottom line here, more teen boys post videos than girls online. However, when it comes to blogging and posting photos, somewhere in the range of 50% of teen girls are doing that now. As this generation who is growing up with the web continues to grow up, stuff like Flickr, MySpace, Facebook, all these social networks are going to continue to become more and more important, and as web marketers, you need to be on top of that. Another fun chart, things like, I'll break it down into music, cell phone, and real estate, because I thought those were nice comparison categories for products as well as services. Percent use the internet and research, 50% of people use the web. For music research, cell phone, real estate, it's 49, 39. Again, just more and more charts showing you that this is not just people wasting time all day. People are actually trying to solve problems. And for a lot of people, things like Twitter are becoming major problem solvers. One more chart. What sources of info do people consult when they need to address problems? The web is now beating things like professional advisors, friends and family members, newspapers, government offices and agencies, television and radio, public library, and other sources. So almost 60% of people are going to the web when they need to address problems. And as marketers, we have a big opportunity when it comes to reaching those people and helping them solve the problems they're looking to do. So let's get out of part one, who's using this stuff. What feels old and traditional about the internet to our respondents is that it's a voluntary social sphere where people can give and can take. What's new about the internet to these enthusiastic users is the rate at which it is influenced by people who use it for new kinds of social purposes. People aren't waiting to figure out its proper use or for clear rules of the road to be articulated. They're simply taking it for a spin. Should you use this stuff? I'm clearly going to make the point that you should, but we'll get to that. It's not easy to hop into something like Twitter or Facebook or MySpace, especially as web marketers, because a lot of times people don't want to be marketed to. They want to solve problems. They're looking for information. And there's a fine line between being helpful as a marketer and being a little slimy, being sort of on the wrong side of helping people. So keep in mind these three questions. Because if you're on Facebook, you know that one of the most frustrating things about something like Facebook is the applications and the constant emails, the poking, and have you been bitten by a zombie yet, et cetera. So in general, I think Facebook is interesting for brand building, for building up a community. But in terms of just pure marketing, it's still very early in the game. And not a lot of people have been able to make that leap into something like Facebook with great success. So when I go through these things in like Facebook and Twitter, et cetera, when we look at certain ones, if you do have like case studies or if you know of a campaign that has worked and that kind of stuff, feel free to share, feel free to say, no, I think you're wrong in that, et cetera. I mean, that's, again, I don't want this to be a one-way argument or one-way persuasion thing. I've got my own views, but definitely hope that you've got some input as well. Sticking on Facebook. What's the use of Facebook? What problems does Facebook solve? For me as a marketer, as an affiliate marketer, I haven't been able myself to bridge that gap. I've done consulting gigs with people where they've used Facebook to create things like fan pages, et cetera. And it works for the short term, but for long-term interest and long-term solvency and that kind of thing of a direct marketing campaign, I haven't seen those results yet. So what I'm basically saying about Facebook is use it, experiment with it, but I don't know. It's not there yet as a pure marketing platform. Yeah?
Well, it seems to me the strength of Facebook, and I don't know how this makes it work for marketing, affiliate marketing in particular,
Right.
is that it is, in its true sense, social marketing, social networking and social marketing. You see what your friends are doing, and that's how most people get turned on to applications. They add their friends at it, they see it in their news feed.
Right.
So, I guess the question is really, is there, other than advertising, which is targeted,
Right.
what, how do you, and how can you sort of leverage that, oh, my friend Tom is doing this, how do I, I should do this, and then somebody else tells me doing it, and that type of a viral thing.
Right. And I gave, last year in Miami, I gave an hour-long talk about Facebook, basically, and we looked at a couple of applications that marketers had developed because it was really starting to come online then. Their app side of things had just been released, the Facebook platform or whatever. And it was interesting to see how marketers were some of the first people to jump into that and try to make sense of that stuff. Honestly, I think for something with the viral stuff, I think the best road to go with Facebook, particularly, is something like Scrabulous, one of the largest applications, which actually got sued and taken down by the people like Scrabble because it was an unauthorized version of Scrabble, basically. But it was a huge viral hit because people were playing games with their friends, and it really looked like Scrabble on Facebook. It was quite addicting. I hate real-life Scrabble for some reason. I'd never played it growing up. I don't know. My wife loves it. And we would actually play, Scrabble games with each other. But it was kind of interesting because you could make a move, and then the other person could make a move a day later. So it had that kind of viral asynchronous thing going on where you didn't have to both be interacting at the same time. So I think there's a huge potential for something that's entertainment-based or something that's not necessarily game-based, but people go to Facebook to network. People aren't there necessarily looking for new shoes, maybe, but if there's some way to build in interactivity into something like a Facebook app, that's always the apps that make it. Something like the zombie bites and all that stuff just end up making more people upset than actually doing anything as far as a marketing campaign goes. But that's a good question. I mean, keep in mind the viral element of all of this stuff because, it's social media. I mean, you want to be able to spread your message, and having people do that, not necessarily for you, but making it attractive for people to do that with each other is much more cost-effective. Twitter. If you know me, you know that I talk way too much about Twitter. I'm a huge Twitter fan. I actually started using Twitter way back in 2006 when it was in a beta. And it was actually before it was Twitter like that. It was TWITTR. So that last E wasn't in there yet. It was very Web 2.0 name-ish, I guess, like Flickr. And the first day I got on Twitter, I remember I looked at it and I thought, okay, that's really lame. You can write 140 characters, not words, not anything, characters like letters, including periods and everything else. And there's just a box there. How is this useful? What problem does this solve for me as a very busy person who doesn't have time in a normal day to send emails, let alone do something as seemingly mundane as using Twitter? So I slept on it, and I woke up the next day, and I got back on and I said, okay, well, I'll give this one more shot because I had a couple of friends who were using this heavily in California, and they were like, oh, it's great. It'll change the way you communicate with your friends, and we need to get everybody we can on it. And I said, okay, well, I'll try it one more time. So the next day, I brought it up, and I started seeing how this could be really powerful. And by the end of the day, I realized Twitter actually was going to change the way I communicated with friends and family, and even now, people that I drive to my affiliate sites. In fact, Twitter, behind Google, is my #2 traffic producer for my affiliate sites, for most of them, not all of them, but the ones that I interact with people on Twitter with, in terms of like a science fiction site that I run, a science fiction fan site, or there's also like a book site that I've had for a couple of years, and I let it go, and then I brought it back with some of the Web 2.0 stuff just to experiment with, and Twitter is a huge, huge traffic producer for that. So there are elements to this that will and can affect how you do things like drive traffic, as well as network with people. Yesterday, I spoke at the Affiliate Classroom Live event, and one of the things I said about Twitter was the great secret in the past couple of affiliate summits has been that there's networking going on constantly that people don't see. We talk about the meat market and the share sale party and this party and that event, the Buy.app party, all these great events where you see each other face to face. But for the people in the know, there was a constant little invisible background social network going on where everyone was connected. People were saying, hey, you're going to go to this. No, I don't want to go to that. Let's go here. And that was Twitter. And it's gotten a lot more mainstream now as far as here at the Affiliate Summit. And I know a lot of you familiar faces are on Twitter and using it. And you know the power of this stuff. The trick is taking this stuff, taking something like what we have here at the Affiliate Summit with the application of Twitter, and transferring that over to your marketing program. So let's think a little bit about what Twitter is, how you can use it. First of all, the one thing I always hear when I start talking about Twitter, and if you've never been to Twitter, go to twitter.com and just look at it. It's not going to be obvious how to use it. It's not immediately transparent in terms of why should I use this, but it's very powerful indeed. So I like this image because Twitter isn't a chat. It's not email. It's not SMS. It's not social network. It's really a new class of communication on the web because, again, it's asynchronous, meaning I don't have to respond if Jim Kukral sends me a tweet or Twitter's at me or whatever. I don't have to respond right away, but I get that message. So it's kind of like email in that respect. But then again, I can write him back right from my mobile, or I can write him back from the web, or I can write him back from any different variety of clients and stuff that we'll be looking at in a second. So it's got this really unique feel to it. And then when you build in things like RSS and some of the desktop clients, it starts getting really interesting. This is an application called TweetDeck, which you can find at TweetDeck.com. Again, the names are silly, but it's Web 2.0. That's how they spread. TweetDeck is a nice application, and the one suggestion I have when people start using Twitter is that you shouldn't use the web app. You shouldn't just go to twitter.com and use that as your only experience with Twitter. I'm sorry, I neglected half the people up here. You shouldn't use that exclusively as your place of Twitter interaction, because the web app, twitter.com, really doesn't have a lot of the built-in functionality that makes something like Twitter very useful, especially for what we're going to talk about here with the marketing stuff. In general, when you go to twitter.com, it's really just that white box, and you've got about 10 updates from friends. If you start following more than 5 or 10 people, it gets very confusing. So people like me have really switched over to using these kinds of desktop applications, or they're called clients, if you will, which can get confusing with the marketing lingo, but desktop clients or desktop applications. Things like TweetDeck, and we're going to look at another one in a second, but the reason I like TweetDeck is because you can break your Twitter followers and people that you're following up into different groups. Seems very mundane, but you can't do that on the web application. So if you're sitting in front of your computer all day and you go to twitter.com, it's just one huge stream of people twittering, and it gets incredibly just frustrating. Like, I follow about 1,500 people, technically, and like 3,000 people follow me, and If I were just to go to the web app all the time or use my mobile, it would be excruciatingly painful. So what I do is I group things into groups like pals, so Jen Good, Jim Kickrell, Todd Crawford, those guys. I have anytime somebody tweets at me, it shows up in a search. We're going to talk about that in a second. And so I can see all my tweets anytime somebody responds to me. Then I have what I call a watch group, which is sort of, Web 2.0 celebrities or famous people, Barack Obama, whatever. Anytime somebody, I think, who might be interesting tweets, I see that. And then all the tweets. So this is constantly moving. Whereas pals, and I've got like maybe 50 people in here who I'm close friends with, family, colleagues, that kind of stuff. That might change every 10, 15 minutes. One person might tweet. I've also got over here, as what I had to cut off, but there's a group from my hometown, Asheville, where anytime somebody tweets about Asheville, North Carolina, it shows up. So the point is, Twitter becomes eminently useful, especially as marketers, when you can start breaking up the data that's coming out of this stuff. When I say I follow 1,500 people, I don't read 1,500 people's tweets. I read stuff that's interesting to me, and I break that up using search. There's really there wasn't any good search functionality built into Twitter when it first launched, and that was a major request that a lot of people had, and for about a year and a half that never came, until finally a site called Summize, which is SUMMIZE.com, was developed. And Summize was interesting because you could search on Twitter. Why would you want to do that? It became so popular, in fact, that Twitter actually bought Summize, and now it's search.twitter.com. So it's been integrated sort of into the Twitter empire, I guess, or little universe that's growing. If you're doing a book affiliate site, and you want to, as an affiliate, grow that site in kind of a social way. You want to bring in people who might be interested in certain types of books, or people that might be looking for certain types of books. I do a lot of antique book kind of stuff. I can put a search for antique books and get updates as people tweet about a Shakespeare book or 1840 copy of Charles Dickens or something. And as those roll in, I can interact with them, if I so choose, using my Twitter account that I have set up for that site. It seems like a high customer acquisition cost, but once you do that a few times, the people that are on something like Twitter are still predominantly kind of in that early adopterish stage, like they're willing to test things out. And they're more than willing, a lot of times, to share, if they find something particularly interesting, like my book site, with their friends. And it really does spread in a nice viral way. So that's one example of how that can be used. So basically, don't use the web application. Download something like TweetDeck onto your desktop and use the full functionality of things like search so that you do get updates, so that you can interact with people on that kind of a level, because a lot of people, including myself, have started using something like Twitter as their search engine. So for example, I'm here in Boston, and I fly in on Friday, and I need some food, I don't know where to go, and I put a tweet, hey, I'm here in Boston, I've got a few minutes, where should I go eat? And I get 15, 20 responses back. Not really, but I get 5 or 10 from close friends that say, hey, go here, go here, go there. That's a lot more powerful for me than going to Google and putting in, Italian restaurant, Boston. So, people are using this to find information in a way that they're not really using something like Facebook, I think. So that's why I think there's a lot more application for affiliate marketers on Twitter than there are for something like Facebook. This is the search.twitter.com website. And for example, I put in Pineapple Express, which is a new movie coming out that one of my friends wanted to go see. And these are people on last Tuesday that were tweeting about Pineapple Express. if you're doing the marketing for Pineapple Express, why not interact with these people? Anyone see Pineapple Express, heading out to see it, Pineapple Express time? People are excited about this stuff. It's a good way to find people who could be evangelists for your brand or your product or what you're trying to market. Yeah?
I was spoke to the head of distribution at Disney. This is a Disney product.
Right.
Friday. So what would I say to him why he should be, in fact, this is exactly what I was talking about, is how would he use that specifically as head of distribution, is tap into this community as it relates to him and distribution.
Right.
Who doesn't know anything about this world per se.
Sure. My sort of token response to that is that these are people who, again, are very engaged online. They're taking the time to express something like a desire to go see this stuff. And they're going to be more inclined than just a general TV commercial to interact with that brand. And if the head of Disney would, or if Disney or at Pineapple Express or some kind of brand were to write back Ashley125 here and say, hey, how'd you like the movie? Here's $10 Fandango coupon. Go tell your friends to go see the movie if you liked it or whatever. To build in that kind of that's a cheesy example, but off the top of my head, to build in that kind of basically free but more time-intensive customer acquisition, I think is very powerful.
He actually laid out the scheduling of his movies for this year.
Mm-hmm.
So what you just said, he could actually tie in his next movies to this current activity on his current movie.
Exactly. And something like Barack Obama, and I say something like because on Twitter, Barack Obama is kind of a phenomenon in terms of followers. He's got the most followers of any Twitter user out there. Something like 50,000 people follow Barack Obama's Twitter stream. And of course, it's written by a staffer or some lowly intern. But it's fascinating to see because sometimes that Barack Obama account will interact with people and write them back. So somebody might say, hey, I'm going to go to a Barack Obama event in Des Moines today. I'm really excited about it. Sometimes you'll see Barack Obama's Twitter account write back and say, hey, we'll make sure to bring this or just some kind of interaction. And it's that stuff that people are really starting to jump on and become more inclined to vote for Obama or go see Pineapple Express or go see a Disney product if there's that kind of interaction on these networks. That makes sense. Am I just blowing smoke, or do people really think that there's a potential for that kind of stuff? Maybe. I think so, because I've seen the proof in my own test with this, and just seeing the traffic numbers in the last year come from Twitter is fascinating because it doesn't require a ton of time compared to something like PPC, but when you add it to something like PPC or SEO, it really becomes an interesting augment to your traffic production and branding and everything else if you're into that. Here's another web app or website that you might want to look into. This is called Monitor. Again, with the cheesy Web 2.0 name, it's Monitter. And Monitor is interesting because it gives you real-life, real-time results. So if you need to quickly find out who's twittering about, say, market leverage, if you're a market leverage network, or me, or Affiliate Summit, you get real-time updates, and it's kind of got that Ajaxy Web 2.0 thing where it auto-refreshes. And again, it's just another way to tap into what people are talking about on Twitter and maybe to get engaged with them. So if I'm market leverage, I'm definitely watching this. And you'll see here there's a little RSS icon, the little orange box, which you also see in all of your address bar. When you type in a URL, you'll see that little icon sometimes if a site has an RSS feed. And at the end here, one of the recommendations I'm going to make is that you have to get an RSS reader to stay on top of all this stuff because it gets really unmanageable. And the worst thing in the world you can do is hop around to 50 different websites and have 100 tabs open in Firefox or Internet Explorer, whatever browser you're using. So you can actually subscribe. So anytime someone makes a tweet about market leverage, or me, or Affiliate Summit, whatever, you can subscribe to that and get an update in your Outlook or NetNewsWire or FeedDemon or Google Reader, whatever your RSS reader is. And again, it makes something like Twitter much more useful, much more useful than just looking at the web page. So this is something I rely on a lot. This, coupled with search.twitter.com, as well as some of the desktop applications, is just a fantastic way to leverage sort of this Twitter momentum. Yeah?
Do you have any advice for managing multiple Twitter accounts? You know, you do your personal one, you've got
Right.
5 sites, each site has one. You want to be interacting with people on all of them at the same time.
Exactly. And you know, the painful thing is, I've got a BlackBerry, I've got an iPod Touch, I've got 6 laptops, and they're all going throughout the day. And how do you how do you do that? Right. Basically, like on my Mac, I have 3 different browsers installed, which is pretty commonplace nowadays. It's not a perfect fix, but I just keep that account for my personal stuff open in Firefox. And then in Camino, which is another browser, I'll have my book Twitter account. And then in Safari, another browser, I'll have a different account going. So that's one way I do it. You can also log in and log out on the web page, but that's a pain in the butt. So the easiest thing I've seen is to use different browsers, which isn't clean, but that's kind of the quick fix. Not yet, which is really fascinating, because on things like IM, you can do that. Trillion or ADM or whatever IM application you're using, that exists, but hasn't been successfully deployed with Twitter. There's a few people that have tried it, and I saw one that was a paid application where you pay like $19 to be able to post to different accounts, but it's really clumsy. So hopefully soon. Yeah. Yeah, well, basically my username for like the book site I was talking about, my username is the name of that site. So when I interact with people who are looking for books or whatever, they see that name, and either I'll just answer the question without a link back, and they kind of figure out, okay, well maybe that's a site, or sometimes I'll put hey, we've got that here on this site, and I'll put a link back to it, which can also be a little clumsy if you're just doing that and that's the only kind of Twittering you're doing, because a lot of times you won't get people following you. They'll sort of label you as a spammer and not want to follow you because you're not really adding much to the conversation. So you also have to make sure that you're providing other types of content on there, if that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, it's either just answering questions and sort of letting them do the guesswork on that being the domain name, or either sometimes just providing the link for them straight to the book. Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think so. A lot of times. Yeah, well, a lot of times, if you have a very long domain, like with an affiliate link in it, one of the problems you might run into is that Twitter will automatically make it a tiny URL, which is a way to shorten the URL. There's a couple of tiny URL makers now, which doesn't provide something like Google Juice or PageRank. But Twitter does rank very well, and you can see that if you search for my name in Google. I'm on so many different social networks, and I've got blogs and everything else, and Twitter's always on the first page for my name, and for all the book stuff I do as well. So there is a lot of potential there, but you have to watch out with that tiny URL thing. And you can manually make sure that it doesn't shorten it. So if you're going to do that and try to get something like PageRank out of it, which isn't necessarily a bad idea, make sure that it doesn't shorten it, because that won't happen. Yeah? Yeah. Just because of the site itself, because there's so many users, and I guess with They're auto-enabling of something like the tiny URL format, that they don't leak a lot of page rank and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of, yeah, I mean, a lot of times for a lot of topics that you search or people that you search, that Twitter is going to be at least number 5 or 6 on their name. It ranks for social networks. From what I've seen, it ranks much better than a lot of stuff out there. It's much higher than Facebook in general, just because Facebook's very much a walled garden in terms of how it throws out links and stuff. Unless you have like a fan page set up and it's very popular, but still, it's hard to get that same effect. Something like StumbleUpon does well, but from my experiments and stuff, Twitter still ranks higher than that or Dig or one of these social networks. Yeah?
Are you seeing any movement in the space from a technology perspective that focuses on verticalization? Twitter technologies that focus on a particular life event?
Like
something that's based on some type of objective. 5 or 6 years ago, we moved from search to vertical search. And
right.
So, are you seeing any verticalization in certain life-changing events for Twitter?
Sort of in terms of having a Twitter set up around a certain category. So
Exactly,
yeah.
And those other
Right.
sites that are trying to take a niche approach to search.
No, I haven't seen people really jump on that yet. I think just because it is so new, and in the last 6 months, it really has sort of hit that upward curve in terms of user adoption. Primarily with people who are, I forgot the age range for the majority of Twitter users, but it's somewhere in the range of 25 to 34. So not a lot of teens are on it, not a lot of people 35 and over are using it yet. It's still kind of in that 20-something block. And yeah, it really hasn't made that shift yet. I think as the user adoption rate flatlines a little bit more and you start getting more teens and tweens and adults and that kind of thing using it, that will come about. You can create sort of a mini Twitter or a category-based kind of thing using like the Twitter API, which is very open in some regards. But yeah, no one's really just built that out yet. Like people are still relying on Ning and then something I'm going to talk about in a second called friend feed to answer that question. So that's a good point. Yeah.
Sort of along the same lines, I've noticed a lot of conferences, they've tried to get some sort of a Twitter network going where, if we're both the same conference and you're my friend, I see what you tweet, but I don't see what everybody else here tweets. And there are several other programs that do that where if you friend the conference, for example, but none of them seem to work. That's the only problem. So much of them out there that allow you to create these network-type things, but I've never seen anybody actually get them to work with supposedly.
I completely agree. And I've been to things like Web 2.0 Expo in San Francisco, which is full of geeky tech people. And even there, they have problems. Or South by Southwest in Austin, which is a big geek fest, where a lot of these people who are big advocates of something like Twitter get together, and there's still no good way to do that. Sean and Missy have something set up here called the AFSUM account. So if you are on Twitter and you want to include your tweet in the AFSUM page, so that anyone who's following AFSUM gets an update, like Yebot here or Yebot, you can, and here's the other part. You just put AFSUM anywhere in your Twitter message, and it shows up on that page. So instead of following all 2,500 people here at Affiliate Summit, I'm following AFSUM. I'm one of these 200 people following it. And anytime somebody updates with AFSUM in it, I get that update. So I encourage people to do that. And that's kind of a somewhat fix to it. I mean, it's kind of neat. And the page auto-refreshes. So Sean set up a cron job here so that it refreshes every, I think, 3 minutes or 5 minutes or something like that. So we tried this at the last Affiliate Summit, and it didn't work so well. So I think they've figured it out, and it's pretty neat if you're into that. So that, I mean, think about how to use that for a business application. I think you could definitely do that. if you wanted to include sort of an aggregation service, so a lot of people are tweeting about what you're interested in or what you're marketing, you can create something like this, which kind of solves that problem as well and provides good, unique content. Next. Sorry. So that's my Twitter focus. I'm sorry I focus so much on that, but for me, it really is just an incredibly powerful tool that I like to share and talk about. Any other Twitter questions before we finally move on? Spam? Twitter spam. Still a hot topic. I'm going to talk about things you shouldn't do at the end, and that's one of my beefs is when people just Twitter spam, especially not to pick on networks, but a lot of times you'll see a network join Twitter because all the affiliates, all the top super affiliates are on Twitter, and they follow 500 people and 3 people follow them back because all they're doing is saying, hey, we got a hot new offer, here's the link, whatever. It's not necessarily spam, but it's not something that Sean Collins or Scott Changro, somebody's going to want to follow. So you gotta mix in the message. It's still at that point where people like myself who love is a strange word for a web application, who really like Twitter, do have a visceral kind of upset reaction when I see a company or a network or a merchant or whatever do that. So maybe. The problem I have with that is that the wisdom of the crowds, especially on something like early adopters technology, is not always very wise. So if somebody has a beef, especially with an affiliate marketing network or something, if someone has a beef with that, it would be very easy to kind of get the lemmings to go, say, oh, they're terrible, and then lower their rating or whatever. So I like the self-policing nature of it still. And I think in a lot of ways, the follower count is a good way to judge. If somebody's following 5,000 people and 200 people are following them, they're probably not somebody you want to follow. Like, they're not going to provide good content. Friend feed. Friend feed is an interesting site. Oops. Friend feed is an interesting site, I think, because in a lot of ways, I'm going to have to skip all the way over. In a lot of ways, it answers some of the questions we were talking about with categories and verticalization and those types of user features that Twitter doesn't have. And with the current downtime of Twitter has been experiencing a lot of problems in terms of staying up because it has been getting so much traffic. A lot of people have moved over to friend feed to sort of build in that Twitter functionality. This is very, very early in terms of adoption. I'm willing to guess the majority of people are people like Tim Jones, who are geeky early adopter people who are also affiliates. But it's going to take a while for this to get there. I just wanted to point out friend feed because what's interesting about it is that you can build in something like rooms, which allows you to create like an affiliate marketing room. And there is one of those, and it's pretty interesting. There's also rooms like there's a CJ room, which a lot of people don't know about, and it's got a strange URL, so it's really kind of top secret, and a lot of people use it as a place to voice frustrations and stuff. So it's a pretty interesting place. People are talking about you, or talking about what you're trying to market, or talking about what you're interested in. And what friend feed does is bring in everything you do on a social web. What I mean by that is that you can hook up like your YouTube account, your Twitter account, your blog, any kind of service that produces what's called an RSS feed, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a second, can be aggregated into this one site. Now, why as a marketer would you care about that? Again, if you're trying to do something like market a very niche product, and if people are talking about it, this is a good place to find it. This is a good place to find that community, that crowd that's talking about this stuff. You can do that with tools and with Google or whatever. But again, it's people who are actively engaged on the web, people who are using something like FriendFeed, even though I think it's around 600 to 800,000 users, active users right now, so it's not a huge crowd at all. But it's an influential early adopters crowd who can translate into some nice evangelization if you go on and interact with them, or if you sort of establish what we were talking about with the Disney kind of a connection. Again, if and when you're going to start using something like FriendFeed, I don't recommend using the web page. It looks like Google, and there's a good reason for that, because FriendFeed is founded by the guys who created and designed Gmail and Google Reader and Google Calendar. 2 ex-Googlers who left have started this. So it's gonna make it, just because it has that Google mentality behind it, I think. It's never gone down, it's very stable, and this is kind of the thing to watch in the next 5 years. So keep that in mind. Yeah, here's adoption rates so far. Twitter, somewhere between 2.5 million and 6 million people. So again, not huge audiences at all, but they're incredibly powerful audiences. FriendFeed, as you can see, really started taking off this spring and is, according to Compete, which we all know not to trust everything about these types of sites, is somewhere around 250 to 500,000. So they're growing, but they're still not completely mainstream again. It's infancy. I've got a baby, so everything I see is baby funny. I actually ordered that. My wife laughed at me, so very hard. Seismic, which is an interesting place, is also something you need to keep an eye out for. Seismic is S-E-E-S-M-I-C. And the reason I like Seismic is because I hate YouTube. People talk about video. Jim Kukral is always doing his daily flip videos, and video's the next big thing. You got to do video. Sean Collins here does so much video, it's sickening. I don't know how they do it all. And you upload it to YouTube or use something called TubeMogul, which is T-U-B-E-M-O-G-U-L, which uploads to something like 12 different sites, which is pretty powerful. So you can make one video and upload it to Blip and Rever and all these different video hosting sites. I like Seismic, though, because, again, it's in that Twitter FriendFeed early adopter-ish crowd. That translates into having better conversations, reaching more quality people than something, I think, than something like YouTube. Just because if you've ever read a YouTube comment thread, you realize that YouTube is full of 12 to 14-year-old boys who are looking for one thing. And there's not a lot of quality in that for me. If you're into the adult entertainment business, I'm sure you can do a great job. But for an affiliate site with antique books, YouTube isn't going to be the place. So Seismic is interesting. It's early adopters. It works just like YouTube. You can grab video. You can embed it, all that good stuff. It's got the same functionality built in, but it's a different crowd. It's founded by a French guy named Loic Lemur, who is kind of the biggest blogger, not kind of, is the biggest blogger in France. And he's got a lot of VC money for this. It's got a lot of backing. I like its future because it's got a social nature to it. It's not just the YouTube comment thread system. When I make a video, you can get replies. So the idea behind this is to make short video and have kind of a video conversation. So like this video has 14 replies. This one has 105 replies. So it's very much more conversational, which for me translates into much more useful for marketers than something like YouTube, which is very just, I'm going to put up a video, 35 people might watch it. 20 of those are going to be 14-year-old boys who I'm not interested in marketing to anyway. So keep in mind the old Seismic thing. Now, I've said for Twitter and FriendFeed that you shouldn't use a web application. And I'm also going to say that about Seismic, because Seismic is a Flash-based website, which annoys the hell out of me, and I'm not a big design snob, but it's just very busy. So what do? There's a nifty application called Twirl, which is TWHIRL. And Twirl is amazing, even though it's got a goofy Web 2.0 name. It's amazing because on your desktop, you can have Twitter, you can have Seismic, you can have, this is another Twitter, Identica, and you can have Friend Feed, all in sort of different categories or different columns, if you will. So if you're mining this stuff for data, if you're looking to interact with users and that kind of stuff, it's pretty nifty to have all of this in one location. Twirl is owned by Seismic, the video company, and they just released the functionality to be able to record video and make replies within the Twirl client. So in other words, instead of having to go to Twitter, Seismic, Friend Feed, and another messaging service called Identica, you can have it all in one window on your desktop, and it's constantly going throughout the day, et cetera. And you can even do cool things like set up searches so that you don't have to watch this, so that when somebody comments about something that you're interested in or you're marketing to, et cetera, you can get an alert and sort of interact with them right away. So Twirl is kind of the Web 2.0 aggregator de jour, if you will. Highly recommend it if you're using this stuff or if you want to experiment with this stuff. Any questions about Friend Feed or Seismic or desktop applications, all that kind of stuff? Yeah.
I'm sorry, you prefaced using this, you say if you would use the other ones, wouldn't you do what? You wouldn't use something.
Oh yeah. I don't like using like the Seismic web interface. I much prefer using this desktop application. Aggregation, yeah. Just because it makes managing all this information much easier. And I know this looks chaotic, but when you use it for a day, it really makes sense. So if you were to see my desktop, it's atrocious. And I've got spaces set up on my Mac, so I've got actually 4 desktops going. And one desktop is basically this and a couple of other social network things. One's email, one's a couple of other programs. And it looks like Web 2.0 threw up on my desktop. But it makes sense for me. And for a lot of people, especially this generation that's growing up with the web, this makes sense to them as well. The days of having just Outlook open are rapidly going away. So. Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I've got things set up so that when somebody makes a comment, makes a video, whatever, about something that I'm trying to do, I basically get an RSS notification. So I go to my RSS feed reader a couple times a day. I have a must-read folder along with all the other stuff, CNN and all, news, whatever. But I have a must-read folder in that RSS thing that includes these alerts. So I'm rarely, if ever, looking at Twirl, but it's going on in the background. And if somebody does make a reply to me or whatever, you can set it up so that it makes a little ding or gives a little desktop notification. And that's very effective, I think. Real-time search. Yeah?
So you use Tweetman for Twitter.
Uh-huh.
And you feed the Tweetman or the Twitter into your Twirl.
Right.
And then you've got your, you go off.
Friend Feed, yeah.
Come off your handheld and feed into Twitter, that'll go to Tweetman and then go into your aggregator, which is
right.
The last one, Twirl.
It's very confusing. It sounds bad.
Somewhat the concept.
Right. So when I make a tweet, it shows up on TweetDeck and it also shows up on Twirl, the 2 desktop things I use, and also get it into my general aggregator.
You could actually RSS feed into all of them, and then they can all come back to Twirl.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Create a video, do the same thing out, back in.
Yep. And that's kind of the neat nature of this stuff is that it's very easy to get a message out to influencers, if you will, and it really has leveled the playing field in terms of getting that message out there. If you're savvy, and it sounds complicated and convoluted, and again, why in the world would you do this stuff? But play with it for a day, and it really does trigger something, and it is a neat way to market. And it's not the end-all be-all. It, again, is a good thing to mix with something like PPC and search, SEO, and your general affiliate tactics and strategies. We have just a few seconds left, but things you shouldn't do include Ping FM, I think. I know it's a great company, great website, but not a big fan in general of these sites that allow you to relay your message to a multitude of social networking sites. When I see somebody using Ping FM, it kind of sets off that, not Twitter spam reaction, but it's like, you know, and I get frustrated. And the reason for that is what something like Ping FM does is you set it up so that your Twitter, your Jaiku, which is another kind of Twitter thing, your WordPress blog, your Tumblr or microblog, your Pounce account, which is kind of like Twitter, your LiveJournal blog, your Blogger blog, your Zanga thing, Plurk, which is like a new Twitter. All these things get updated. Facebook, Brightkite, Plaxo, even your AIM or your Facebook status, all that stuff gets updated with the same message. So if I were using Ping FM and I just wrote, I'm giving a presentation at Affiliate Summit, that message would go out to all of these different networks. Now, it seems like a dream, especially for marketers. I mean, why would I say don't do that? And a lot of it has to do with the general nature right now of these social networks. It's easy to do that, but you're really putting your status or your potential value to the community at risk. Because early adopters, people are snobs. And when they see like that, a lot of people call that spam, which we know it isn't spam. We know what spam is. But to a lot of the crowd that are on these social networking applications, mixing all those into one message, just it seems inauthentic. So if you're going to get engaged, especially as a marketer, initially avoid this. Either don't just use or don't even go near something like Jaiku or Pounce or LiveJournal if the only reason you're going to use it is to replicate your Twitter or your blog update. There's a couple of different ones out there, but Ping FM is kind of the big one. There's also a couple of things called, like this is Tweet Pro, which is just came out. I actually got this because of a Google alert. And basically, you pay $20 a month to have something like Centrics for for Twitter. So you pay Tweet Pro $20 a month, and they basically just search Twitter for you. And they return users who are talking about the topic you're interested in. So I'll put in social media, and boom, you get this. You can do this for free. You don't need to pay $20 a month to do this. Search.twitter.com has this functionality. And it's a little frustrating to see these types of things being built to sort of not take advantage, but to put a barrier between people who are just starting to use Twitter and the full functionality of what the site can be. So in general, don't pay for these social networking things. Don't pay for social networking tools. Centrics is a great thing. Pay for Centrics. Don't waste your money on something like this when you can do all this for free very easily just by going to search.twitter.com. And there's a lot of different ones out there. I've even seen services that charge you like $9 a month to automatically update your Twitter account so it looks like you're using it even if you're not using it. And I'm not sure why anyone would spend $9 a month doing that, but there you go. So that's the basic gist of this stuff. Early Adopter 101 is what I should have called this. But these things are really becoming very fascinating, but also very powerful tools for both just regular users and for marketers and for everyone on the web. And as Doc Searle said at the beginning, we're still at the infancy of all this stuff. It's going to continue to grow. It's going to continue to evolve. But keep an eye, especially as web marketers, on these early adopter things. They might seem lame and waste of time right now, but the generation that's growing up, the 8th graders that I taught, are on the web all day. They love social networking. They see the web as one big social network. It's not just about going to Google anymore. So you've got to stay on top of that as marketers. What can we do? The best thing we can do as Carvana get taught is just to be kind to each other. And that's the #1 rule on social networks. Kind in terms of not just manners and being nice, but be a kind marketer, and you will do very well. So, any questions? Yeah?
Yeah, something you didn't talk about that I'm kind of curious about, in line with the spam issue. It's things like tweet later, where you can set an automatic message when somebody follows you.
Right.
Tweet later again is another, that's a free one that you can also do automatic updates like you're using Twitter, even if you're not.
Right.
Or even the other thing is like with
Don't forget to fill out your survey form if you're leaving.
the other thing is like with Facebook, you can add 1,800 different things in your news feed, and all your friends are seeing all these different status updates.
Right.
So is that treading that line, or is that going to the other side?
I think the Facebook status update thing is fine, that's what it's for, or friend feed even. I mean, same thing. With the tweet later thing, it's frustrating to some extent, but it's also a good service because Twitter goes down a lot. So, you know, if you've got something you want to tweet, it's good just to plug that in. Or, like for me, I write 5 blog posts in a day, and they come out different times in the week. So, generally, that's okay. I mean, you know, I'm not trying to set the standards or anything, but just from the general psychology of the early adopter crowd, people really don't have a problem with that yet until it crosses that line. It's still fuzzy, but yeah. So I think the aggregation things are fine. You and then you.
But I do read a lot of the SEO people
Mm-hmm.
who talk about using it just as getting good ranking for your particular keywords.
Right.
And it looked to me like Ting FM, you know, the typical standard accepted procedure is you write something and then you have a signature line.
Right.
Signature line that goes back to your website. It looked like Ting FM was the most efficient way to do that. So you write an interesting comment and then you have a link back to your site. That's
Right.
your signature. Is that, in your opinion, the best use of the best way to do SEO using this amalgamation of
Yeah, I mean, if that's your pure motive, if you're not interested in people following you, or if you're not interested in you know, potentially marketing to people and that kind of stuff in a direct marketing kind of way, if you're just doing SEO, yeah. I mean, Ping FM is tremendous for that because those sites do have a very good ranking in Google just because they're social networking sites. And things like Dig and Jaiku and all that stuff, even though they have very small audiences of maybe 300,000 people at the most, they still rank very well. So if you're pure SEO, go for it. But you're not going to have the long-term benefits that you could have in other aspects, as far as the followers and marketing and that kind of stuff.
I was just curious what you felt about, I don't know if they would be the same type of sites, but things like LinkedIn.com
Mm-hmm.
and professional sites. So I had, just me looking at social media, I was curious as how you would look at it both from that perspective and maybe do you market or target demographically? I got a teenage daughter, and I got on Facebook only because I got an affiliate summit. And
Right.
I didn't know what I was doing, so I just add my daughter as a friend.
Yeah.
And we had to have a family meeting because she told me
Don't add your kids.
she can't get a friend request from her dad. So
Yeah.
I didn't, now that I'm here and I'm at this, I can
Right.
understand it a little bit more. But initially I'm like, well, what's Facebook? My
Right.
daughter's on it.
Yeah.
What it is. So I guess I'm looking at demographic specific. How does things like LinkedIn?
Yeah,
Something I'm
yeah.
involved
LinkedIn is professional. I forgot the age number there as well, but marketing on LinkedIn is tricky, just because it's almost like it really is like an adult Facebook in terms of the amount of stuff that you do get if you are a heavy user there, or if you even have a little bit of use. I don't know about you guys, but I mean, I get so many like LinkedIn requests, or hey, pass this on to 6 people down the line, or hey, I'm looking for a job. Anybody got anything open? And I haven't logged into LinkedIn in like a year probably, just because it had that Facebook kind of zombie application feel after a while. And it's tough to market to marketers, you know. And LinkedIn is sort of, unless you're doing B2B in sort of an innovative way, it's tricky getting past it. I mean, I think a lot of people are going to something like Facebook for that. I mean, even adults. I mean, I've got like, I don't friend people on Facebook, but I've got a lot of people who are friending me because they see I'm in the industry and they're like, oh, well, you know, let's network and maybe do a business deal. So Facebook's kind of taking the place of LinkedIn for that, I think. Yeah, there are a couple of sites where kids have, you know, Photoshop stuff where their parents try to friend them, you know, and they'll put a big fail or something, and you know, it's kind of tricky. Yeah, when I was teaching 8th grade, MySpace was the big thing a couple of years ago, and Facebook hadn't really come along yet, and I had an account, and just because I was setting up for like our high school reunion or something, and one student found it and they all passed it around, and you know, of course they're making fun of me. They're like, "Oh, you're 50 and you're on MySpace," and it's like, no, you know, it's useful for me too. But yeah, it's especially if you're marketing to teens, it's really tricky. But you know, the best thing is to be interesting, like with the Disney thing with Pineapple Express. I mean, you know, if you can approach them that way, that's much more advantageous long term. Anybody else? No? Well, thank you so much, and thank you for staying late. And if you have any questions, let me know.